Welcome to the Money Huddle, a podcast that discusses financial topics for families, retirees, and small business owners. Hosted by Michael Baker and Ross Marinell. All opinions expressed by Michael and Ross or any podcast guests are solely their own opinions and may not reflect the opinions of Advisory Alpha. The podcast recording is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Advisory Alpha may maintain positions in securities discussed on the program.
Welcome back to the Money Huddle. The year is 2021, and hopefully you haven't lost your sanity yet. Ross, Happy New Year, buddy. How are you?
Well, I'm feeling sane, I guess. I feel good.
You feeling
It's 2021, it's a new year. All right, so Michael, I got to come clean.
Confess.
You know, last football season, we did a podcast that we called If Quarterbacks Were Stocks.
We did.
And I compared one Baker Mayfield, quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, to Beyond Meat because I said he's all sizzle, no steak. Beyond Meat is a fake meat company.
Right.
And I got to issue an apology to Baker. This is my public apology. Baker, I'm sorry. You were not fake meat. You won a playoff game this year. Your team is playing really well. And I got to give props to where props are due. And I was wrong.
I think that Baker would accept your apology because your name isn't Colin Cowherd because they have a huge beef going on right now. But
listen, I'm sure he's recording another Progressive commercial today. But anyway, accept my apology if you have time in your schedule.
Well, I don't know if I tweeted this or not. I might have put this on a different social media account, but I said I put out there that Baker's next Progressive commercial is going to be at Heinz Field, his new vacation home.
No, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But I thought about this too, Michael. On that same podcast, we were comparing our Cam Newton, longtime Carolina Panther,
right, to
Netflix. Do you remember that?
I think so.
I think we were wrong on him too. Maybe he was Quibi.
I can't. I mean, Cam had some really good years, though. He did, man. I can't just completely discount. But I will say, this is my opinion about Cam. Is I think Cam somewhere along the way really lost his focus on football. That's my opinion from the cheap seats, because I watch how, he kind of acts and does things. And, somebody that puts that much thought and detail into their outfit, and what they look like on game day, that's my opinion, and it ain't worth anything. But we'll see what happens. It looks like he's going to end up possibly back in Washington. So Washington can call themselves the Panthers because they have like Coach Ron Rivera. They would have Cam Newton, and they've got Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen. They got like all our quarterbacks from last season and our coach.
So there we go. So it's been a little while since we did a podcast. We have quite a few things to talk about.
Yeah.
Something I thought we could begin with today is just a recognition of how much activity and attention has been placed on Tesla recently. Eric Balchunas, who had a great tweet, he said Tesla is beating SPY in daily volume basically every day now. And in the past 30 days, Tesla has been about $1.1 trillion in trading, almost double SPY's and about as much as the stock traded in 2018 and 19 combined. So when we talk about activity level on a single stock, this is an enormous amount of attention being put on one company, meaning Tesla is trading almost twice what the index is trading. I think next on the list, a single stock was Apple, trading at about $400 billion during that 30-day period. So significant attention being driven on one company. And of course it's Tesla with their dear leader, Elon, and the price has been, we can't discount that the Tesla had an incredible 2020 as far as price.
Yeah, I mean, the quote that I'm sticking with on this, it came from Josh Brown, and I'm not sure exactly what he was on he was on a webinar or a podcast, but he was talking about Tesla, and he basically said Tesla is a religion. He goes, I don't bet against religions. And he said, maybe one day it'll be a stock and we could talk about it, like we talk about a stock. He says, but right now it's a religion, and I'm not betting against it. And I agree with everything he said, because I know a few people that are true believers in Tesla and what they're doing and their story. And it's pretty fascinating. One of the articles that I was going to share and talk about with you, it came from an article that I read is from Eli Dorado. I hope I'm saying that right. And it says notes on technology in the 2020s. There is a ton here to unpack, an absolute ton to unpack. And for me, I think I can understand technology pretty well, but I wouldn't call myself like extremely forward thinking in technology. And this article is one of those that's really out there, but he gets into, they get into in this article so many different things: biotech, cryptocurrency, energy. But his section on transportation and space, when he gets into talking about what they're doing with these rockets and SpaceX, it's mind blowing. Like that entire piece of it. It's way too technical for this podcast. I would fumble all over myself trying to regurgitate that. But what I'll do is I'll put a link to it on the site. So if someone wants to go read it, my biggest takeaway is, if they're right, with this next, the 2020s and this next decade, we could see some just mind bending, growth in technology and innovation. And I think this pandemic was kind of a kickoff point to a lot of that. Think of how many things had to turn on, all systems go on their technology and their research, because the old way of doing business either wasn't possible or was really going to hinder being able to grow and survive in this current environment. So it's interesting, and I think it's a worthwhile read for anybody that. But again,
what I will go back to is, so when it stops trading as a religion and starts trading as a stock, all of that technological advancement needs to turn into revenue, which needs to turn into net income to justify this type of price point. Because I want to give you an example just from market cap. I'll compare another company to Tesla with a similar market cap. So if you're listening, Tesla, as of today, this is through White Charts, Tesla has a market cap of $796 billion. Okay, that's really sizable, $796 billion. They're trailing 12 months, okay? So they did a little over $28 billion in operating revenue. And they had a net income this last period of $556 million. Okay, so those are big. $28 billion in revenue, $556 million in income. There's another company that has a similar market cap. Let me pull up their information. So I won't say the company yet, because you'll kick me. But this company had trailing 12-month revenues of $77 billion, but a net income of $25 billion. Similar market cap. That's Facebook. Mm. So, that's cool that there's technological advancements. At some point, is it going to turn into revenue and profit? Or is this always just, we're buying into the story and the narrative and the media frenzy, and we're just going to, just pile into something because that's what's happening, right? It's trading over $1 trillion in 30 days.
Well, I think the story part is extremely powerful, because you can clearly see there's a vision for Tesla. What the future holds for it remains to be seen. But it's exciting to have somebody out there like that. I mean, who else can we think of that's pushing the envelope in that way? I mean, Elon Musk is kind of in a class, in my view, by himself, as far as, the major CEOs that are out there, because he's just trying to do stuff that no one's even attempting. He's like, we're going to Mars, you know.
Baker's a believer. All right, so there you have. We've got you on record now.
I'm just simply saying that he's got a devoted following, and they right now are not caring about any of that, because they just think this guy is. I heard someone else. So I read this somewhere and it made me chuckle, but it said, Elon is like one of the. He's from another planet, and they like put him here, and they said he had to figure out how to get home. So that's what's driving him. And he's like, I got to get off this rock. And as crazy as it's been the last few months, I can't say I blame him. But I thought that was a laugh, because if you look at like what he's doing, I mean, he's creating and driving all these technologies, like the Boring Company and SpaceX, right. The battery innovation that he's created. It's pretty impressive. So hopefully, I'm rooting for him, because I like to pull for people that are trying to do things that are outside the box and push us forward. But I will say that there will eventually be a reckoning. I mean, eventually there will be enough shareholders that say, hey, look, we need to see this thing really be worth what we're having to pay for.
Right. Proceed with caution. Okay, so we're talking a little bit about technological advances. I heard you mention cryptocurrency.
Oh,
so
man.
So Bitcoin has been back in the news.
It's back.
In a big way. And this story popped up, and I have to share this with you.
Yeah, I think we have the same story.
This came across, and so I'll just read this portion to you. So there's this German-born programmer living in San Francisco. His name's Stefan. He has about $220 million worth of Bitcoin stored on what's known as an iron key. So this is a small hard drive which contains a private key to the wallet. And if you lose your password, apparently you have 10 chances to recover it, or it's locked forever. This gentleman has used 8 guesses already.
I know. He's down to the final 2.
2 guesses left to unlock potentially $200 million. And I have a lot of thoughts on this, but you go ahead, Michael.
He needs to use that 50-50. He needs to call a friend. He needs a hint from the audience. He needs to pull in like all the stuff. You know what? I'm not going to lie to you. Even in just sitting here in real time.
So you're making Who Wants to Be a Millionaire references.
This might be, he might need to go see somebody who can hypnotize him. You know what I mean? Like access that part of his brain that would like take him like back to that moment where he was writing the password down. It'd be worth a few investments. So spend a little money, go to some hypnotherapy.
If our listeners are unfamiliar with some of the processes to hold cryptocurrencies, it's pretty common to have some type of cold storage wallet, which is basically some type of electronic, if it's a USB device or in this case, a small hard drive that then has some pretty detailed password security protocol, right? Because the whole point of storing your cryptocurrency in a cold storage wallet is to protect it. And so you don't want someone to be able to recover that data on their own. And the challenge with that, of course, is that if you lose the paper that you have your information stored on, you may lose it forever and have full possession of the device.
That's just, to me, is and here's the thing is that is one of the reasons why a lot of people feel very positive about Bitcoin is because of the security, the secure nature of it. This is a situation where this guy loses this password and that thing shuts down and locks his private keys. Those coins are lost. That's gone. They're gone. That's over 7,000 Bitcoin that are done.
I saw a stat the other day that said 15 to 20% of the coins are not trading because they think they're lost.
Possibly.
like they just are unrecoverable. People forgot they had them. They don't have the computer device that they stored them on. They've lost their passwords. And so it's just becoming a challenge because this is, Bitcoin in particular has gained a significant market cap. It is a growing asset class, really. I mean, we're going to talk about this more next month when you're hosting some information from a speaker who's coming in. But this is becoming big business now. And so I was even talking to an estate planner, like people need to start detailing how to access these in some way so that if they die, their family, their beneficiaries, their heirs, right, can get access to whatever value might be there. In some cases, a really sizable amount of money.
Absolutely.
You don't want it to be lost forever.
No, you're absolutely right. And so you mentioned next month I'm going to do a sit down interview with Tyrone Ross Jr., who is extremely well known on social media. He is a free thinker. He's a leader in the cryptocurrency space. If Tyrone says, check this out or read this or follow these people when it comes to cryptocurrency or, decentralized finance, I try to do that because I trust his judgment and he's like in the thick of it. And we actually are going to get to have a one-on-one with him. And I'm looking forward to that. I think he's got so much to share, and he has a huge heart too. So I love that about Tyrone. But to that point, this is a topic that people have to start paying attention to and the reason why is, I don't think it's going away. And I'm not saying that it's for everybody, but I want people to understand what it is. And also, if you are going to dabble in it, like what you're dealing with, like this guy, come on. We were joking before we started recording. I said, you're going to have that type of level of security, man. You need to like tattoo some kind of code on your body somewhere so that you never forget like what that password is. I mean, we're talking $220 million. And this isn't the first story that we've joked about. I remember there was another person of an exchange that died and no one had his access codes, and it was
right. His laptop was encrypted and he's running an exchange. And again, a huge amount of money potentially lost forever. And so, yes, I agree. I can't wait to listen to Tyrone Ross Jr. discuss and share his insights because I want to believe. I want to be a believer, right? I do. All right. It's like Elon. I want to believe. Listen, I'm too contrarian, and I see these types of stories, and I think, how does this grow to be mainstream? Part of the challenge with having this sort of, the freedom of some of this crypto technology is that sometimes maybe you don't want it, right? That's part of the benefit, is that it's kind of out of the network. But when something gets out of the mainstream network, where it's custodied at a bank or like a true financial institution, okay, so great. So you have the privacy of that coin, but you also have the ability to lose all of your investment just because you forgot your password. I mean, could you imagine if you forgot your password to your custodian where your brokerage account is and you couldn't recover it?
Well, I think with some things, there's different levels of risk. You could take on the full level of risk by having all of your private keys, and holding it off, offline. Then there's these, exchanges where you might have the ability to go through some identity verifications to do certain things. So, but that is, again, that's the nature of it. And the people that really believe in it, that they see that as a feature, not a bug. They see that as that security that protects those assets from confiscation. It protects them from, people being stolen or swindled away. So it's going to be interesting to see that. I'm looking forward to that conversation, but I'm glad that we're talking about Bitcoin because I read this article this week from a group called Stone Ridge. And I actually think that this might have been something that Tyrone put out there, said, we need to read this. And I'll put a link to this. It's a PDF. I haven't fully read it, but it starts out with the greatest intro in my view, because it talks about what is money, and it kind of gives a history of money and things that we've used in the past as money, and how, money essentially can be multiple things. But one of the things they compare it to says money is a technology. And I highlighted this quote, and I want to get your feedback on this, because especially in the wake of what's going on right now in our country, it says, in the same way a stock certificate is titled to company capital, money is titled to human time. People sacrifice their time for money, which enables them to trade for commensurate sacrifices from others. When prices are distorted, we are each inhumanely robbed of making fully informed personal choices with our time. How's that land on you?
It's
deep, right?
Deep. It's hard for me to make the connection to that comment and Bitcoin price and movement and volatility, because I just don't see it the same. I'm not there yet, and maybe I'll learn a little bit more.
So I'll get there. I'll help you connect the dots, right? So one of the big things that the people that believe in Bitcoin, they refer to exactly relates to what we were just talking about. This person lost 7,000 potentially, right? I'm pulling for Stefan. I hope he can figure this out.
We want him to recover.
But, potentially he just lost 7,000 Bitcoin. Well, they're only going to ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoins can be divided into Satoshis, and that gets into a whole technical conversation about, how it works. But it's not like US dollars, where if you need more dollars, we have an entity that will just print more dollars. And that's what we're doing right now. Like, we are the printing presses, like they're building more printing presses so they can continue printing, and we just saw, I think yesterday, the outline. I don't know if the specific text of the legislation is out yet, but there's an outline for an additional $1.9 trillion package that's coming from President-elect Biden. And on top of the 900 plus billion they just did. So we're looking at already, $3 trillion on top of what we've already done.
Right.
And there are a lot of people that are really getting, incensed about this, because they feel like, yes, there is some degree of, fiscal stimulus that's needed, but some of this is, we're just debasing our currency and devaluing our dollars. And so that is where I bring it back around to, if you look at money as time, a lot of people trade their hours for dollars, because they are working class, or, they don't have, a mechanism. They're not a business owner. They don't have capital. Their biggest asset is their human capital and what they could do with their labor. And if we continue devaluing dollars, their labor gets to be worth less, less and less from a nominal standpoint. And I think that's what they're talking about is, this is not just a haves and haves not. This is a situation where some policies could be exacerbating and creating more income and wealth inequality. And that's where a lot of the Bitcoin people think that Bitcoin could be a potential outlet for that, because we're not going to print any more, make any more Bitcoin.
Again, okay. All right. And I would say that the people who really believe in that as a future form of currency have a point. But I would also say how much of the activity is just purely speculative on hoping for price appreciation, and they're not seeing the altruistic side of what you just shared. They're just looking at this as an asset class to potentially hedge against inflation, or also just be a place to make money.
Oh, for sure.
All right. So that was so on that same note, I saw a pretty interesting post from, let's see here. I think it was Daniel Crosby. He was recapping Robert Shiller's bubble checklist. Since we're talking about crypto and Bitcoin and Tesla, he said, all right, so this was Robert Shiller's bubble checklist. Okay, 1, you have a sharp increase in asset price.
Check.
2, you have public excitement. 3, you have a media frenzy. 4, you have stories of people earning a lot of money, causing envy. 5, you have interest in the asset class among the general public. And then lastly, you have new era theories to justify price increases.
There it is.
We've got a number of things checking off in that way. And as we know, price can reverse very quickly and pretty dramatically. And we're not necessarily calling for a stock market correction or being prognosticators. I'm just saying be careful with what you're investing in and make sure you're staying within your guidelines of your comfort level and your risk tolerance. Don't get out above your skis just because you're seeing headlines of people making money. It needs to be within the comfort of your own risk tolerance and risk capacity. And we've said a number of times, the market is driven by fear of principal loss and fear of missing out. And when you see that someone else is making a headline because they're claiming a victory in a particular stock or asset class, that's fine. Take it in, look at it, do your due diligence, but we should not and try not to become part of this fear of missing out group, because I think that can really hinder our ability to make clear-headed decisions.
No, I agree. I think right now this is just a time where people just need to be mindful. And again, to bring this back to something that we constantly say is create yourself a financial plan and have an investment strategy and investment policy that you stick to. Because if you start to create, rules and policies for yourself, then you can work your plan. It's when you decide to deviate from a plan or you don't have a plan, but hey, you start allowing emotions to drive your decisions. That's when it can go off the rails for a lot of people, I think.
I agree. So I had one more thing I wanted to share today.
Let's get it.
This has been a very tough, challenging year for our high-risk cohort in the United States. Mm-hmm. And what I'm referring to are people over the age of 70 or 75. This is a very near and dear group to us because we do work with a lot of retirees, and we understand how difficult this year has been for them this past year and continuing into this year, and the effects that isolation has, particularly for people who are living in assisted living facilities or independent living facilities. I think they've had some pretty harsh restrictions on movement, being able to go out and kind of move freely, to shop, travel, to just kind of move around. And I think we have to remember, to reach out to our friends and family that are in those situations and give them the extra attention that they need, because, we've heard stories about people not being able to, if they leave to go see a routine exam, like a routine doctor's exam, they come back and have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine. And we've heard stories of people canceling routine doctor's exams. I'm talking people in their 70s and 80s, right, because they really couldn't face being left in their room for 2 weeks. And I know you've had some stories about that too. And I just want to remember, do you think in any way this will have sort of a reversal of that transition to assisted living care, independent living facilities? Because I think if I were seeing what happened this year and I could stay in my home, I might choose to do that as long as humanly possible.
Right. Well, I think that the overwhelming majority of folks, their first thing is they would love to stay in their home. It's just when they reach a point where they can't physically take care of themselves, or they need the nursing, or they need the custodial care, they need the skilled nursing care, whatever it is that helps them gravitate to moving into some of these facilities. But as we were chatting about this, what I'm considering and looking at is not so much the people that are already there. It's possibly people that you will have to make that decision in the future that are observing how these facilities are handling this. Because in a lot of ways, these places have become, very, 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 airtight when it comes to visitation, movement, socialization. It's not the place that was on the brochure when these folks moved in. And, obviously you're there, you're kind of helpless. And I wonder if there are people that are watching it saying, no, not me. Like, I don't want, if we see another virus, 3 years from now and we're all doing this over again, I don't want to be locked in my room. I don't want to be in a place where I can't go have lunch with my friends, and I'm basically a prisoner in my little apartment, and I think that there are going to be people that watch that. And I think some of the adult children whose parents are in these places are watching this, and they're going to be thinking, not us, not me.
Right. I agree. That's well said. And I think it's going to have some effect on people's idea about going to an independent care or independent living facility. Because you're right, the brochures look pretty nice. The facilities oftentimes are well taken care of, and there's some advantages to doing that. And at the same time, though, the isolation has been a heavy price to pay for a lot of people, and it's tough to deal with. So I just wanted to bring that up. We're always thinking about our friends and families in those situations. And if you know some people in that situation, reach out to them. Make sure you keep them in your mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I put this out the other day. I think that there are a lot of people right now that are struggling and just dealing with this pandemic. There's a lot of fatigue that's happened. Everybody that I can think of is off their routine, in some way. They're not getting to exercise the way they want to. Their kids aren't getting to socialize with their friends and, go to school in the way that they, want to do. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we're having to endure, and the spectrum is broad on that. But I think that the longer this thing goes on, a lot of people, it's just wearing a lot of people down mentally, and there's people that just suffer in silence. And, don't be afraid to just reach out to folks. If someone, if you're thinking about somebody just out of the blue, like, shoot them a text, give them a call, just say, hey, I just was thinking about you, want to see how you're doing, because a lot of times people just need that, that little extra encouragement can go a long way. And I was telling Elizabeth, we were sitting in the kitchen talking about this, and I said, look, man, I said, we are almost through this thing. I said, they're rolling the vaccines out. The light is coming at the end of the tunnel, not to say that we won't have more stuff to deal with. I said, but I want everyone to just be able to, let's just bear down and let's just get through this next few months, get back to warm weather, get these vaccines more saturated out, and let's try to just put this thing in the rear view.
All right, buddy. Well, here's to a positive 2021.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. As always, thank you guys for listening. If you got something you want us to talk about on the show, feel free to email us. You can email us at themoneyhuddle@bcplanning.com. Find us both, Ross and I, both on Twitter. He doesn't like to be on Twitter, but he is. So find him. He is there. And as always, we will talk to you next time.
See you.